his body of work is remarkable.
It's insane.
It is remarkable. I rated him. I gave him a 2 out of 10 on a regular basis.
Probably remains the best jab in boxing history.
Welcome to Talk Boxing, the Q&A with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Don't forget to keep liking the channel, keep subscribing to it, but most importantly, keep leaving the questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with the first question, Spence. And it comes from Lewis Roberts, who kicks us off with, do you think JOE CALZAGHE's career, quality and body of work is underrated?
Definitely. I think that...
By whom?
He just by the general public. General public. Like, JOE CALZAGHE really should be a superstar. If you look at his achievements, you look at his CV, when he won the world title going back to Chris Eubank in 1997, made 20 defences, beat the likes of Roy Jones, Bernard Hopkins, to name a couple.
Lacey.
Jeff Lacey was a career best performance. You look back on them, anybody, like, go back on YouTube, have a look at the CALZAGHE fights. Guy was, like, outstanding. He was outstanding. Like, you know.
Why do you think that is? Because some people won't have achieved as much as him. When you go out with an undefeated record and you go out with a body of work that Joe had, why do you think there were other fighters, and I'm not seeking to diminish them, that that had great fights? Well, Ricky Hatton is one that you could make an example of. Ricky had great fights, and obviously the Costa Zoo was a momentous occasion. But with respect to Ricky, they're not quite the same caliber of body of work that Joe's got. But Ricky is revered and renowned and recognised and appreciated. Why would you make the argument that Joe suffers in that respect?
I think because, I mean, it was only in the later part of his career, but Joe used to stay down in Wales a lot, train down in Wales, and just sort of like he didn't really put himself out there as much as maybe he should have, and he wasn't really particularly media friendly, and I think that plays a big part of it as well. And I think that's probably why Joe didn't become the superstar. Like, Ricky had a little bit of a backstory. He was, he liked being in front of the media, and sort of like he took legions of fans over to America, whereas Joe done it sort of all under the radar, really. We just, do you know what I mean? He was one of those
because his body of work is remarkable.
It's insane.
It is remarkable.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably, I don't need to top and tail it, I think we're both in the same space. I think amongst the boxing fraternity, I think he's recognised for the great that he is.
Outside of that.
I think outside of it, and I think maybe if Joe were in the era now of social media being much more prevalent and boxing being much more visible again, maybe he'd get some of that. But maybe he wouldn't, because he's not one of those that wants to get in front of the camera.
I think he was happy not to.
And do a dog and pony show. But great fighter. Great fighter.
Yep.
Right. Second one is from Chris D. Did you ever rate Audley Harrison? I rated him. I gave him a 2 out of 10 on a regular basis. I spent money watching his fights, and I didn't get any value from it.
Yeah. I think the problem that we had with Audley was that, I think that the Michael Sprott was the beginning of the end when he got knocked out by Michael Sprott. That was when he sort of come apart, and then he had some bad losses. David Price, I think, flattened him in a round, and his last fight was in 2006. Martin Rogan beat him on points. Then he lost to Deontay Wilder. And I think what happens with some fighters, we talk about this, so I'll reference anthonyjoshua in this one as well, because some fighters get that damage. Some fighters get that psychological damage, and they never overcome it. And
do you think the fact he got this deal with the BBC and the nature of comfort that it gave him economically took him away from...
And financially,
That's what I mean, economically,
Yeah. No, I just think... Sorry. I just think that the problem that he had was that he never overcome that knockout with Michael Sprott. I think that done some damage, and he couldn't overcome it. He was like a rabbit in the headlights. Did you think he was good enough? Did you think he was good enough, Audley Harrison, to meet the billing? I mean, what was it, the 2000 Olympics? Yeah, he won a gold in 2000 Olympics. Audley Harrison mastered the art of 3-round boxing, where he gets out of trouble. But when you get into professional boxing, at some point you've got to bite down on the gum shield. You've got to mix fire with fire. And I think that's where.
So, did you ever rate him? Is the overall summation?
I did rate him. Yeah, I did rate him. I rated him, but he was not a world-class heavyweight.
Next up is a question from Brody. With the Foreman film out soon, which I'm really looking forward to seeing after watch that dog Apollo Creed 3 or whatever it is, Creed 3 drivel. I told Tony Bellew the other day it was absolute crap. which he didn't appreciate much.
I was going to say, to get a good
he's
response to that.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's a great film for morons. Clearly, not for me. But with the Foreman film out soon, which I am, as I say, looking forward to.
Yeah.
Who else would you like to see a film made about? Obviously, down the years, we've got The Hurricane, which was made about Reuben Turner, which is a great film.
Brilliant film.
We've got Raging Bull. We've had the Ali films that were made.
Yeah.
We've had the When We Were Kings, which is all about Ali and George Foreman and the Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah.
And there's a litany of boxing films, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm going to add to it.
You probably like Champ, don't you?
I'm going to add to it.
Go on.
I'd like to see a film about Ken Norton, the forgotten man.
That's a good one.
Ken Norton, see, he boxed. He had a trilogy with Muhammad Ali, winning the first fight by split decision, losing the second fight by split decision. Then the third fight he lost on a unanimous decision, where many people felt that he had won that fight clearly, and he was just one of those guys that boxed the best, and he sort of like went under the radar a little bit, and not many people
they talked about him being one of the hardest hitters, didn't they?
Yeah, but he was a great fighter as well. You know, great victories on his record, fought the best, beat the best, and he's the forgotten man. So Ken Norton, the forgotten man. I've even titled it.
Yeah, I was quite interested in Aussie Joe.
Joe Bugner. Interesting.
Because he's such an interesting character. And at the one particular point, he was being heralded as the next best thing, wasn't he?
I like that.
And he, with all the stylistic outlook that he had and the flamboyant character, when it came to the ring, the one thing he didn't do was pull the trigger, was it? And it'd be interesting. I thought there was always an interesting story to be told there. I mean, obviously, they've done the stories of Sonny Liston and people of that nature, where you get into that sort of body of work and you see those sort of people. And we've seen Hands of Stone with Roberto Duran and those sort of fights. But, for me, I'd like to see, about a journey of a person that was built up to be such a big thing that ultimately didn't get to where people thought he could have got to, and all that goes with Joe Bugner. So I thought that would be quite an interesting one.
Have you got a title for it?
I haven't actually. I just made it up on the top of my head as I was thinking. I better come up with an answer as well. The next one is, Brendan asks, where do you think Larry Holmes would rank in the current era?
Great question. I think that Larry Holmes...
Eastern assassin.
Yeah, I think that Larry Holmes would rank right up there in the current era. If you go back to the Larry Holmes that beat... All right, I know he was a shot Muhammad Ali, but if you go back to that time and you look at Larry Holmes and look at his performances, his jab was the best, that jab, and probably remains the best jab in boxing history. He was brilliant at that, broke him down. But what it was about Larry was that he was very durable as well. Ernie Shavers. Do you remember Ernie Shavers?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Ernie Shavers
was the one that Ali polished his head, didn't he?
That's it. Yeah, but he was probably one of the biggest hitters of all time, and he hit Larry Holmes with a left hook. I forget what round it was. He hit him with a left hook. Larry Holmes went down like he had been shot, and somehow got up and won that fight. Incredible durability.
For want of a better expression, he had a bastard of a time, didn't he? When you think about it, he comes off a generation of Muhammad Ali, and people never forgive him for
the beating he gave
Ali, and the fact that people then presided over a period, and then he finishes his bookend with Tyson's arrival. So you've got two iconic fighters that have been bookends for Larry Holmes. Muhammad Ali at the beginning of his ascent and his world title aspirations and outcomes, and then you've got Mike Tyson arriving on the scene and taking heavyweight boxing in a completely different direction. I personally agree with the questioner in terms of not the question, but the framing of the question. Where would he rank? I think he'd rank right up there.
Yeah.
And I keep on. The more I look at this heavyweight division, the more I look back at some of the fighters that have gone in the past, and I can't help myself but think this. I think Mike Tyson, I know I'm going off shoot from the question, would run havoc amongst the current heavyweights. I think he'd beat all of them.
I'm with you.
I think we're crowing about this current crop of heavyweights in Fury and Joshua and Usyk and Deontay Wilder, and I just can't help myself but look back and think, watching Tyson beat the people that he beat, whether it was Tyrell Biggs or whether it was
Trevor Berbick,
or whether it was Michael Spinks, or whether it was Frank or Tony Tubbs or Tony Tucker and whoever else he went on to demolish and knock them out. And obviously James Bunker Smith was a 12-rounder, but notwithstanding it, you still saw. And I just think that Mike Tyson would beat the lot of them, and I think that Larry Holmes would give a lot of them a run for their money. And I think the only one that would probably really give him a problem is probably Tyson Fury.
Listen, let me flip that question just a little bit then back to you. Prime Larry Holmes versus a prime Mike Tyson. Now that's a great fight.
I just think Tyson in his prime would beat most people.
I'm going with you.
I just think the head movement, the power, the ferocity, the way he closed the gap so quickly. I just think he was just from that period where
from 86 to 90,
correct,
really.
Yeah, until he married Robin Givens and got himself caught up all that
Tokyo getting knocked out by Buster Douglas. That was the beginning of the end.
But that was seeded in other things. That was the outcome. That was the disease. The symptoms were getting married to Robin Givens, and you could see the decline against Frank Bruno, and you can see the decline setting in.
Yeah, sure.
Final question. Maxwell asks, the Middle East investment in the sport is widely accepted now. Away from discussions on sports washing, do you think it's had a positive and negative effect on the sport as a whole?
I think it's had a positive effect on the sport as a whole because it's all about prize fighting. And what it is about the Middle East is that they want the best fights out there. And if they can generate enough money, they will get the best fights because that's what it's all about. A lot of it comes out of politics. Who's getting the purse splits? You know, whether you're going to get 40%, 50%, 60%. And I just think the Middle East are going to make that investment. And I think, you know, in the future, over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see a big change because I think they'll be buying all the big fights, but we'll be getting the fights that we as boxing fans want.
Maybe.
So I think it's a good thing.
Maybe. I think what they've done is they've created an uneven landscape, and that they will be the only people that can put on big fights, and they will have created this feeling in fighters that unless you're fighting in the Middle East for the kind of money that the Middle East has put up, and it ain't about revenue. They throw money at fights that have no commercial sense because it's not about commerciality. It's about, although the question doesn't want to talk about sports washing, it doesn't want to talk about undue influence, that is the reasons why these levels and quantums of money are being paid by the Middle East, because it does give them an opportunity to showcase themselves and to leverage their own particular values and what they want from the world through sports like boxing. I think it diminishes certain aspects of the sport. I think it would clearly diminish the boxing capitals of the world, which are London and America. And whether that's a commercial reality or not is a different discussion, or just a fact of globalization. I think there is as many good things about it as bad. We can see this arrangement in December of these stellar fights all happening, but you can see a raft of other fights that won't happen as a result of people not thinking they can get the money unless it's felt in the Middle East. And if the Middle East don't fancy it, then all of a sudden you've got this situation where unless I'm getting 60 million or 100 million for a fight, I'm not doing these fights. So it's a mixed bag.
Do you think it's going to have a knock-on effect? It's
hyperinflation. It's the same thing. It's the same as football. You know, you got Roman Abramovich buying Chelsea. You got Sheikh Mansour buying Man City. They ride the hyperinflation from what they're prepared to spend affects everybody else. But listen, it's one of those conversations that, you know, perhaps you're just pushing King Canute-ish, pushing back against the tide.
Sure.
That's it for this week's edition of Talk Boxing, the Q&A with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Thank you for your questions. Keep liking the videos, keep subscribing to the channel, keep leaving the questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time around.